In a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city, where the streets wound gently between rows of modest homes and maple trees that turned crimson in the fall, there lived an elderly man named Rahim. To most of his neighbors, he was simply Uncle Rahim, the old man with the soft smile, the slightly stooped back, and the habit of waving to everyone as he sat on his porch with a cup of tea. His home was humble, a place that smelled of cardamom and old books, filled with photographs of children and grandchildren who visited on weekends. Uncle Rahim had lived a long life. He had worked hard in his younger years, building a living in a country far from the village where he was born. He was respected, loved by those who knew him, and he never failed to offer kind words or share stories from the old days. But there was something about him that only his family truly noticed, something that would become the thread of his life's final chapter. Rahim always delayed his prayers. The masjid was only a short walk away, 5 minutes, 10 at most with his cane. The call to prayer, the Azan, floated from the loudspeaker 5 times a day, a gentle reminder to the entire community. Whenever it rang out, Rahim heard it. He heard the Hayya ala Salah come to prayer, echoing through his window. But more often than not, instead of rising, he would sigh, look at his tea or the comfortable chair beneath him, and say, "I'll go in a few minutes. Let me just rest first. There's still time, Allah knows my heart." And so, the minutes would pass. The congregation would gather. The rows would fill and stand shoulder to shoulder, while Uncle Rahim lingered in his chair, or fiddled with the television remote, or dozed lightly after a meal. By the time he made it to the masjid, if he made it at all, the prayer was over, the imam had left, and only silence remained in the prayer hall. Other times he simply prayed quickly at home, sometimes even forgetting until much later. His grandson, little Yusuf, who was only 7 years old, once tugged on his hand after the Maghrib Adhan and said, "Grandpa, let's go now, we'll miss it." Rahim chuckled, patting his head gently. "Go with your father, beta. Grandpa will come for Aisha. I'm a little tired now." And though Yusuf ran eagerly with his father, he looked back at his grandfather with puzzled eyes, wondering why he didn't feel the same urgency. The truth was, Rahim loved Allah. He believed, he fasted in Ramadan. He gave sadaqah quietly when he could. But he had fallen into the habit of treating Salah as something flexible, something that could wait until it was convenient. He thought there would always be more time. He thought, "I'll go tomorrow, when I feel better, when I have the energy," and days turned into years. Then came the night everything changed. It was a chilly evening in early winter. The Maghrib Adhan called out, echoing across the neighborhood, bouncing softly off the snow-dusted rooftops. Rahim heard it, as always. He glanced at the clock. Just a few minutes, he thought. He sipped his tea slowly, feeling the warmth in his throat. But as he leaned back in his chair, a sharp, searing pain gripped his chest. His teacup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He gasped, clutching at his shirt, his breathing shallow, his eyes wide with fear. The room spun around him. He tried to call out, but his voice broke into a whisper. His daughter Amina rushed in from the kitchen. "Baba! Baba!" she screamed. The next moments were a blur. Neighbors rushing in, the sirens of the ambulance, the flashing red lights against the darkening sky. Rahim faded in and out of consciousness, the voices of paramedics muffled as they lifted him onto a stretcher. In those fragile moments, his mind raced, not to his money, not to his possessions, but to something far heavier. He thought of all the times he had delayed, all the times he had heard the Adhan and said, later. And now, when his life itself seemed to be slipping away, he wondered, what if later never comes? At the hospital, machines beeped steadily. Rahim lay in a bed, his body weak, his face pale. He opened his eyes and saw the curtain between his bed and the next. From behind it, he heard a faint voice, a young man, his breathing labored, whispering quietly, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. And then silence. Nurses hurried in, pulling the curtain shut. Rahim realized with a jolt that the man next to him had just died. The shahada was the last thing on his lips. That young man had been ready. Rahim felt tears sting his eyes. If that had been me, he thought, what would I have gone with? The excuse of later, the habit of delay? He remembered his youth, when he was a young man working 2 jobs to support his new family. He had been strong then, full of energy, proud of his ability to provide. But in his pride, Salah had often come second. I'll pray after I finish my shift, he used to tell himself. And then, exhausted, he would come home late at night and collapse on his bed, missing Aisha altogether. His wife used to plead with him, Rahim, even 2 rak'ahs before you sleep, don't miss it. He would sigh and say, tomorrow, insha'Allah, tomorrow will be different. He remembered weddings and parties, where music filled the hall and laughter drowned out the sound of the adhan from the nearby masjid. His friends would say, we'll pray later, brother. Don't worry, it's a special night. And Rahim would join them, convincing himself that Allah would understand. He thought he had endless tomorrows. He remembered business trips, hotel rooms where the Quran gathered dust in the drawer, where Salah became something he squeezed into a corner of his schedule, if at all. He remembered airports, long drives, and the times he had excused himself with, it's too hard to find a place to pray now. I'll make it up later. And now, lying in that hospital bed, he realized that later had stolen decades from him. His heart ached, not just from illness, but from the crushing weight of regret. It was during one of those long, sleepless hospital nights that he opened his phone and listened to the Quran being recited softly. The verse struck him like thunder. Establish prayer at the decline of the sun until the darkness of the night, and also the Quran at dawn. Indeed, the recitation of dawn is ever witnessed. Surah Al-Isra 1778. He repeated it to himself, whispering through tears. Witnessed. Fajr is witnessed by Allah, by the angels, by creation itself. And how many times had he slept through it, thinking there would be another dawn? He wept silently, clutching the hospital blanket, whispering, Ya Allah, give me a chance. Just one chance to show you that I can come when you call me. When Allah granted him that chance, Rahim held on to it with everything he had. The first adhan he heard after being discharged was for Fajr. He was weak, still sore, but as soon as the words Hayya ala Salah filled the air, something inside him stirred. Instead of delaying, he struggled out of bed, leaned on his cane, and stepped outside. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but he walked slowly, one step after another, until he reached the masjid. The imam and congregation were surprised. Rahim Bhai, Alhamdulillah, you're here, they said warmly. Rahim smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. He stood in prayer, shoulder to shoulder, his heart pounding not from illness, but from the weight of finally answering the call. From that day onward, Rahim changed. He no longer treated Salah as optional, as something to delay, The adhan became the most important sound in his life. He scheduled everything else around it. Even when his health worsened, even when his legs grew too weak to carry him, he insisted on being pushed in his wheelchair to the masjid. Rain, snow, summer heat. Nothing stopped him. His family sometimes begged him to pray at home, but he would shake his head firmly. No, Allah gave me another chance. I will not waste it. There was something beautiful about seeing him there. The congregation noticed. Young men would rush to wheel him in, setting him in the front row. Children would greet him with smiles. He became a silent reminder to everyone that no matter your age, no matter your health, the prayer is worth racing for. One evening after Isha, the Imam sat with him. "Rahim Bhai," he said gently, "you remind me of a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first matter that the slave will be brought to account for on the day of judgment is the prayer. If it is sound, then the rest of his deeds will be sound." Rahim nodded, his eyes moist. "I wasted too much time, Imam Sahib. I only pray Allah forgives me for the years I delayed." The Imam placed a hand on his shoulder. "Brother, Allah is Al-Ghafur, Al-Rahim. You have turned back to Him sincerely. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, 'The one who repents from sin is like the one who never sinned at all.'" Rahim wept silently, his heart filled with both regret and hope. As months passed, his health declined further, yet his resolve grew stronger. His grandchildren often saw him wheeling himself slowly toward the masjid before anyone could offer to help. "Grandpa, let us push you," Yusuf would plead. But Rahim would smile and say, "No, beta, each push is my jihad. Each turn of the wheel is my way of racing to Allah." The community noticed. The old Rahim, who used to wave from his porch, but rarely joined the congregation. Now they watched as he became the first to greet the Imam, the last to leave the prayer hall. His presence changed the very atmosphere of the masjid. He wasn't just an old man coming to pray. He was a symbol, a reminder of how fragile time is. One evening, a young man named Bilal approached him after Isha. "Uncle, can I ask you something?" Rahim smiled gently. "Of course, son." Bilal hesitated, then said, "How do you do it? Even with your health, you never miss now." "I'm young, I'm strong, but sometimes I delay. I tell myself I'll pray later." "What changed for you?" Rahim looked at him with eyes that carried decades of regret. He placed a trembling hand on Bilal's shoulder and said, "Son, I saw death. I heard the Shahada leave another man's lips while mine were silent. I realized that every adhan I delayed was a gift I had thrown away. Don't wait for Allah to scare you into obedience. Don't wait until your legs don't carry you anymore. Race to Him while you still can." Bilal lowered his gaze, tears forming in his eyes. That night, he was among the first to arrive for Fajr. Rahim's transformation spread quietly through the neighborhood. Children began waking up earlier. Fathers began bringing their sons more often, and even elders who had grown lazy in their habits were moved by his perseverance. It wasn't his words, it was his example. A man once known for delay had become the one who raced. But Rahim's journey was not without struggle. On nights when his chest ached, or when winter winds howled against his windows, his nafs whispered, "Stay home. You're too weak, Allah will understand." And perhaps Allah would have understood. But Rahim remembered his old self, the man who always made excuses. He clenched his teeth, gripped his wheelchair handles, and whispered, "No, this time I will go." His daughter Amina often argued with him. "Baba, please. Pray at home tonight. It's snowing. You'll fall sick." "My daughter, if I fall sick going to Allah's house, then let my sickness be witness for me on the day of judgment. But if I stay here and ignore his call, what will be my excuse?" Amina would weep silently, wrapping his scarf tighter around his neck as she pushed his wheelchair. She understood. Deep down, she was proud of him. As his health declined further, his nights became restless. He often woke before Fajr, sitting in his chair, whispering du'as. One night, Yusuf crept into his room and found him crying quietly. "Grandpa, why are you crying?" the boy asked, his innocent eyes wide. Rahim pulled him close, kissed his forehead, and said, "Because, my dear, I wasted too much of my life. But I cry also from happiness, because Allah let me fix a little before it was too late." Yusuf, too young to understand fully, simply hugged his grandfather tighter. But that hug carried more comfort than words ever could. Then came Rahim's final week. His body grew frailer, his voice softer, but his spirit only more determined. The Imam came to visit him at home, reciting Quran by his bedside. Karim listened with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Imam Sahib," he whispered, "promise me something." "What is it, brother?" the Imam asked gently. "Promise me that when I am gone, you will tell the people not to wait like I did. Tell them Salah is life itself. Tell them the Adhan is not just sound. It is Allah inviting you to stand before Him. And who am I to delay the invitation of the King of Kings?" The Imam nodded, unable to hold back his own tears. "I promise, brother." And so, the final Fajr arrived. Rahim rose earlier than usual, his body weaker than ever, but his heart strangely light. He whispered the Shahada softly as he wheeled himself to the masjid. The Adhan rang out, filling the dawn sky, and Rahim smiled. "This time I am not late," he thought. He prayed in the front row, his forehead pressed against the carpet. And in that sujood, the sujood he had once delayed so many times, Allah took his soul gently, mercifully. The masjid wept that morning. Men who had prayed beside him sobbed openly, remembering the old man who had once been late but died as one who raced. The Imam, true to his word, stood at his janazah and said,